Ahí está. Listo. Okay. Well, hello. Today we're going to present about poetry. Our team is formed from Chelsea Bernal, Sonia Ledon, and Jesus Gonzalez.
Hello.
So, in poetry, we have three subgenres. The first one is lyric, also narrative, and dramatic. Lyric poetry expresses a person's state of mind or attitude in order to get a deep, intense, and reflexive poem. Some benefits are writing it lets us get out of our feelings and thoughts on a subject while reading it, encourage us to connect and find meaning in our experiences. Also, poetry can have a positive impact on the social and emotional learning of children. It may offer us a new way of thinking about something and inspire us um, about the creative thinking. One example of lyric poem would be Sonnet 18, is the most famous in the sequence of Shakespeare's sonnets. It may be the most famous lyric poem in English. I found two issues about writing lyric poems. The first one is that I can make many different forms and structures, from traditional sonnets to free verse. And the second issue is when we don't understand a poem, it feels like we don't understand something about the human experience.
Okay. Now we're going to talk a little bit about something called the narrative poetry. And this might sound not very familiar to you, but trust me that we all are very exposed to this peculiarity. And narrative poetry is a form of poetry that tells a story using resources typically used in poetry, such as verse, rhyme, and division between stanzas. The entire story is usually written in verse. And doing a little research, I found out that this is one of the oldest poetic genres since it was utilized before the invention of the printer machine. So it was oral instead of written. So back in the days, people used to go from town to town, passing certain information, and most of the time was they were using the narrative poetry. Next. I made some time to look for some examples, and that's why I mentioned that it was kind of surprising to me finding out that there are a lot of material that we can read. I choose these three because I think they're very interesting, but of course, you can find so many other examples on the internet. The first one is the Iliad, a pretty well known book, and we have Paradise Lost, which basically it tells the story of the fall from grace of Adam and Eve. Very interesting book based on what I read. And the last one, it's a little novel called We Are All So Good at Smiling. And basically, this book tells the story of a little girl who suffers from depression, and so basically counts the story of her a week before entering the hospital and a week after leaving the hospital for having some suicidal thoughts. So I thought that it was very interesting, and as you can tell, they are very diverse one from another, so you can definitely have so many options to read and get exposed to what narrative poetry is. Next. Well, reading narrative poetry, you can get a lot of benefits, but I choose three of them. One of them is the study of poetry helps students develop skills that are necessary to succeed in school and in their future careers. One example that I can use is that you can gain a lot of different vocabulary that you can use in your daily basis. and it will take us out of the everyday, out of rational thought, and introduce us into the poetic thought, and also give students who enjoy reading a new outlet to explore. Sometimes we're so accommodated to using the same tools inside a classroom, but once in a while, maybe we can incorporate narrative poetry in order to switch a little bit. And one of the issues that I found, basically, is the only one. It's that the level of formality can be a little bit difficult for some students, since they might not have a lot of vocabulary. But with the practice, I can assure you that you will gain a lot of new words and vocabulary that you can include in your conversations. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the dramatic poetry. And the dramatic poetry, it's a form of poetic composition that it's written in a dramatic form. It consists of dialogue between characters, monologues, and also soliloquies, and conveying a history or idea through dramatic action rather than description or narrative exposition. The benefits of the dramatic poetry are that our speaking poetry aloud can nurture good vocal habits and also develop emotions and set a range of tones for the actor. Also, I found that the genre study on dramatic poetry can yield a number of positive effects for secondary school students, and this helps them to improve their writing and in all genres, and fears the students will learn how to properly use language devices and poetic conventions by looking through a powerful lens and the craft of writing poetry. With this, the students will learn to write with a distinct voice and also a creative flair. And here I put them two examples that are the most, I think that the most popular. We have the Romeo and Juliet novel. And as we know, the Romeo and Juliet is a tragic love story, and where two main characters, the Romeo and Juliet, are supposed to be sworn enemies but fall in love. And due to their families' ongoing conflict, they cannot be together, so they kill themselves because they cannot cope with being separated from one on another. And also, I put the La Divina Comedia de Dante, and I think that it's really popular. This treats about how Dante goes to the different levels of the Inferno, and this one is the summary of one of the books, because I think that there are kind of like four books about this. And the story begins with Dante getting lost in the woods of a Maundy Thursday, and he attempts to climb a mountain but encounters three wild beasts who threaten him as he wonders what to do. And Virgil, the author of the Latin epic Aeneid, appears. And also, I search for poetry for students, the most I think that easier. And then we have The Chaos by Gerard Knowles Trinity. And about the poem, Gerald Knowles was a Dutch traveler and writer, and Trinitas, its very popular poem, highlights the difficult spelling and pronunciation of some English words, and it focuses in the English language itself, making it perfect for language learners. And also, I found the January by Joan Updike, and A Pizza the Size of the Sun, and by Jack Pelutri. If you want to search that, there are the titles. Okay, so in conclusion, poetry is a type of literature of artistic writing that attempts to stir a reader's imagination or emotions. The poet does this by carefully choosing and arranging language for its meaning, sound, and rhythm. Like other forms of literature, poetry is creative imagery, and it is very important to the literary and cultural landscape of humanity for a wide range of reasons. Poetry can be a powerful teaching tool, and it helping students to improve their literacy and also the way that they express their emotions.
Mhm.
So I think that for us it's everything. So I hope you enjoy the presentation. And it's all. So bye.
Bye, teacher. Bye, compañeras.
Bye.